Welcome to the Hoja on Architecture podcast. Video Game Architecture. Chapter 9, Fictional Architecture of Warcraft. Another group of studies focuses intensely on the architecture of Azeroth. First of all, the common perception is that the stunning diversity of Azeroth's buildings secures it the top spot, making World of Warcraft a world-building epic. Intentional or not, many architectural solutions in the game work similarly to the real world. Moreover, the World of Warcraft privileges architecture as a spatial experience in terms of moving, wayfinding, and the joy of exploring. Many scholars think that spatiality is an essential factor in video games, and that very fact makes architecture far more critical to designers. However, games utilize architecture and landscape for the sake of the gameplay. The buildings and rural settings are primarily used to create visually appealing environments, which gamers refer to as eye candy. And World of Warcraft proves this phenomenon in terms of its rich, colorful surroundings. Many scholars agree that Azeroth has non-realistic but unique cartoonish graphics. Moreover, World of Warcraft simulates building materials in terms of their appearance. The wood or the stone does not behave like its actual properties in the real world. They exist just with their meanings. All these attitudes structure the architectural narrative. World of Warcraft, therefore, becomes a visual storybook. Another task of architecture in Azeroth is to differentiate between the opposing factions according to their cultures mentioned before. The Alliance races tend to build in stone in strict geometrical plans with varying degrees of integration into the landscape. In contrast, the Horde races prefer cloth and wood materials in a looser organic plan type. Even for urban design, the Alliance capitals of Stormwind for humans and Ironforge for dwarves are in a geometrical pattern. In contrast, the Horde capitals of Orgrimmar of the Orcs and Thunder Bluff of the Taurens are organic. Selecting different settings from the distinct cultures of the races mentioned will help in understanding the role of World of Warcraft's architecture in terms of storytelling and world building. Since the Orcish culture was designed to be savage and bloodthirsty, the form and the material of their structures are pretty offensive. Many of these organic buildings have long spikes, chains, and untidy war banners. For a realistic counterpart, they somehow resemble the Turkish and Mongolic tents, the yurts in form as expected. The Tauran culture has many prominent Northern American native influences, as mentioned earlier. They prefer to live in structures featuring organic fabric tents and teepees, reminiscent of those found in real-world native cultures, and many totemic poles, as mentioned before, are visible around their settlements. The troll settings, on the other hand, directly remind us of the tropical real-world architecture risen on stilts for maximum cooling. The materials, such as structural tusks, stretched fabric, and thatched roofs also support this similarity. The Stormwind, the human capital of Azeroth, has many stone walls, castles, towers, and a central cathedral. The city was designed with medieval architecture in mind. The geometrical organization known from the urban plan is also followed for the building design. Ironforge, the dwarven capital of the game, is a great forge carved in the mountains. Irish and Scottish influence is visible through the structures inside this cave. As an alliance race, the strict geometry of both urban design and structure design is also applied here. The central city of the Night Elf culture is Darnassus. This and any other Night Elf setting are full of shiny magical trees since the Night Elven culture is linked with nature. As mentioned before by one of the game designers, the influences of both Japanese and Byzantine architecture are evident. The Night Elves have either pagodas and torii gates or larger ornamented domes in their settings. Introduced in one of the later expansion packs, the Pandaren are another unique culture designed in detail. The Asian architecture was followed in the settlements of Pandaria, the main Pandaren continent in Azeroth. Almost every structure has a roof with curved corners, the main Asian architectural characteristic. Moreover, there are massive temples, monasteries, and various pagodas with courtyards for meditation purposes. Almost everywhere in Pandaria is decorated with bells, gongs, and kites. There is also a Great Wall in between the Pandaria zones, obviously mimicking the Great Wall of China. For an overall evaluation of World of Warcraft architecture, several determinations can be put forward. Yet, these must be framed within a broader consideration of the game's narrative and spatial construction. Any assessment of its built environment is inseparable from the mechanisms of storytelling and the processes of world building that underpin Azeroth's design. Before attempting to conclude stylistic tendencies, material representations, or cultural distinctions, it is essential to recognize how these architectural elements function as part of a cohesive narrative ecosystem. In World of Warcraft, architecture does not exist in isolation. It operates in concert with landscape, lore, and player interaction, forming an integrated experience that continually reinforces the fictional world's believability. Therefore, before presenting the specific determinations regarding its architectural characteristics, a comprehensive analysis of how the game employs architecture to communicate stories, construct identities, and shape the player's perception of space is both necessary and unavoidable. When we step into Azeroth, we're not just entering a game map, we're entering a living archive of imagined cultures, each telling its own story through the way it builds. From the towering spires of Stormwind to the wind-worn totems of the Tauren, these spaces remind us that architecture is as much about identity as it is about shelter. In a sense, World of Warcraft gives us a lesson in cultural anthropology, disguised as a game. And perhaps that is why that world endures, because it speaks to something deeply human, our need to see ourselves in the spaces we create. This concludes the Video Game Architecture, Chapter 9, Fictional Architecture of Warcraft. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.